Hey, my name is Jeremy, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about why I believe Obsidian is not the right choice for teams and their knowledge bases. Now, before you get upset, I actually love Obsidian. I've been using it for years. Matter of fact, I'm going to just jump right into it right now and show you. So, for many years, I was journaling daily almost in Obsidian, saving so much of my own personal knowledge and data in here, whether it was books, my journals, just tons of information was in here. Also, back in March of last year, you can see I was even using it to branch out some of the conversations I was having with some AI agents through N8N and was piping in some of the JSON for a RAG database usage here. So certainly dove in pretty deep with it. And you can even see just how in-depth the knowledge base got on that side. Now, in addition to that, more recently, what I've been doing with Obsidian is I've been trying to figure out how to map different projects from Claude Code in it. So certainly a very cool pattern here. You can see I've got different projects. This is a particular project that is a knowledge-based project. And it's neat to see how this project is actually built completely by AI. It goes around from different projects on my local drive to find out what the current status is of projects. So really cool to see that as well. So anyways, that's what I've been doing with Obsidian, and I've been using it for years. I've been trying it out with AI as well. So just want to give you that heads up. I've been using it. Now, the reason why I believe that you're here today is either you like Obsidian, which, hey, welcome. I do too. You're either thinking that Obsidian is cool, but I don't know how it's going to work for my team, or maybe you've tried it and it hasn't worked for your team, or you're running into some friction. And then maybe some of you have heard about Obsidian, but you've never actually used it before, but you know that it's a very popular thing right now. All those things are very valid, and I'm happy you're here. Really, what we're looking at right now is Claude and Obsidian. The combination is a very powerful combination, and I'm really impressed that it's exploding like it is right now. Now, some of you are going to say, well, Jeremy, yes, Obsidian and Claude, they work well together, and they actually work for teams. And I have seen examples of it working for teams, small teams, because of the architecture of Obsidian. And that's why I'm bringing up architecture right now. The architecture of Obsidian is a file system. And a file system natively is on your hard drive or on a flash drive or anywhere you can file away folders and files. It could be in the cloud. It could be a Google Drive that's shared directly onto your drive. But ultimately, the underlying architecture of Obsidian is just that. It's a file system. And ultimately, when it comes time for sharing data and sharing knowledge, that's a ceiling that actually inhibits Obsidian from going further. And I think that's where we're all seeing a lot of friction here. And that's why I took a deep dive about 10 days ago and really dove in to see what Obsidian can really do in terms of teams. And everything I was looking at, it kept running into issues from concurrent writing, which means more than one agent or more than one person is trying to write to the same file at the same time. Ran into issues with permissions. Does everyone have the right amount of permissions? Does the CEO and a new hire of a team, are they able to see the same files? Are their agents able to see the same files? That became an issue there. So there was a lot of things that were stacking up against the file system. And ultimately, a database is really what is necessary. That's ultimately what I came to the conclusion of. And maybe some of you have already done that as well. Maybe you're thinking along those same lines. And so that's what I did. Let me go ahead and switch over here to the screen. And I created something called the XI Reactor Brilliant Knowledge Base. Now, XI Reactor is a project that I've been working on for about a year now, but Brilliant is something that I put together this last week using Claude Code. Shout out to those of you who are using Claude Code. It is amazing. But Brilliant is essentially a knowledge base for teams, and it's built around the same concepts of Obsidian, where you can map data really easily with the wiki links. Now, there's some other really cool things in here, like type links, concurrency, where you can have more than 100 agents writing at the same time. There's governance built into it where AI is governing whether there's a conflict, and if there is, does it need to be elevated to or escalated to a human? There's other really cool things like permissions, whether a CEO has read and write permissions versus that new hire that I mentioned earlier. What do they have access to? And many more things. And rather than just talk to you about it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump in and show you a demo of what it's doing inside of Claude Cowork. I think that a lot of our business and a lot of our team members are probably not jumping into Claude Code. Claude Code is pretty intense, and while I definitely enjoy it, I know even for me jumping into it, it was a bit of friction on that side. So what I want to do is I want to show you Claude Cowork in action here. Now, the way that we interface with Brilliant and Cowork is actually through an MCP. Now, I know some of you out there might be saying, well, MCPs are inefficient. Well, here's a little fun fact for you. If you're running Claude Cowork or Claude desktop and you have a Teams or an enterprise account, you can actually specify an API, like a custom API domain. But if you don't, if you're running a personal account like I am on this machine, I've got a Max account, and what you end up needing to do to connect to this is use an MCP. So I've got an MCP server spooled up with the Brilliant knowledge base. So we'll connect to it with that. So I'm sure many of you have been inside of Cowork before, but just to get started, a lot of you might be on the chat side. You'll want to click on Cowork here in the middle, and you'll get one of these screens here. It just says, let's knock something off your list. So to get you started really quickly, what you would want to do is you'd want to jump into your Customize button here, jump into your connectors, and you'd want to go ahead and add a new connector. Now, I've already got the XI Reactor Brilliant knowledge base already installed, and I've given it permissions, all the permissions to do everything, so that it's not going to have to ask me to do anything while it's interacting with the knowledge base. And what we'll also want to do is also jump back over to our skills and look and see that we have a skill called knowledge base, and this tells Cowork how to interact with the knowledge base. It's also got some references to the API that is built into the system as well. So it gives it a lot of information on how to act and react with everything that's going on. To add new skills, you just would simply say upload a skill, and you can get that going. So if you haven't done that before, that's as easy as it is there. So we have a connection to the Brilliant knowledge base. We have the skill telling Cowork how to act and interact with it. So let's jump back over to our new task. Last but not least, there's one third piece of this trifecta here, and that is putting in a project folder. Now, I've created one called the Brilliant Anchor. And the Brilliant Anchor is essentially a project folder that Cowork can always hold on to. It's got a Claude.md file in it. Let me just go ahead and pull that up for you here. Here we are. It's got a Claude.md file. It's got the skills file as well, a skills folder. And it's got 3 other folders here. So it's got an inbox, an outbox, and an archive. Now, what I use the inbox for is if I ever want to drop a report or drop any data into this particular system, I'll drop it into the inbox, and the skill already knows that if there's anything in the inbox, I need to use that. I need to take that and work with it. If I ever ask the bot to ever create anything, let's say I have it create a report, it'll go into the outbox. So you can actually see I had a report generated from the knowledge base here, which we'll look at in a little bit. Another cool thing about doing this is you can actually drop it in to your file system here. So you'll always have these folders ready to go. So if I have a file, I'm going to drop it into the inbox, it's always going to be linked up to this particular folder. So cool. So we have the 3 pieces. We've got the connector to the MCP. I've also got the skill installed. And then we also have the project folder, the anchor. So let's go ahead and just start with a fresh question here. I'm creating a PDF for a meeting I'm having later on today. It's a financials meeting going over Q1 financial results. Please find any reports that are in the knowledge base and help generate a PDF. This is for an internal meeting. It is not outward facing. All right, so there we go. We've got the the brief prompt there. I'm going to go ahead and click start. And we're watching Cowork working. Now, many of you have already used Cowork before, so this is nothing new. But as it's going along, it's going to go ahead and say, hey, I've got some important things to do. I need to go check on the XI Reactor Brilliant knowledge base. So it's going to the Brilliant system there. It's running some tools. It's looking through the database. Now, I did seed this particular knowledge base with about 500 different entries. And so there's a lot of different information about this particular company that's in here. And one of those things is actually financial records. And so as we're watching this chug along here, what it's doing is you can see the progress up here in the top. It's initializing. Basically, it's collecting information. Then eventually it will also start to look for reports. All right. So it's giving me some updates here. All right, there it goes. It's writing the PDF. While it's working on that, what I want to do is show you inside of the knowledge base. What I've done is I've created a front end to this. This looks a lot like what you'd see in Obsidian. It's not finalized yet. This is still in the works. So essentially what we're looking at here is jumping in and seeing what's actually in here. This is a way to double check and see the knowledge base as it is. But really the pattern here of what we're really looking for is just simply interacting with your knowledge base through your agents. That's where I see things going. And I think that's where a lot of the other experts that are out there are seeing this going. The interface is going to be with your agents, and they're going to have access to this knowledge base and provide you the information back. But what I wanted to show you, though, is there is financial information inside the knowledge base here. So if we look at our financial reports, we have quite a few financial reports here that it's looking through and finding information out. So Q4 of 2025, it shows the revenues at a certain amount. And what it's going to do is it's going to go in here and try to figure out how much things have changed. We'll actually be able to see how well the PDF turns out in the end. Some other cool things that you'll be able to see here. I'll just show you. This is another graph system that's been generated based on the 500 different links that are here. If we double click on any one of these, it will go ahead and open up the system. We can see some permissions is already saved here. We also see some of the links here. So this is the engineering team link, all the shared links with the engineering team. We have some other fun stuff too, like adding team members in. This is all stuff that's inside the knowledge base itself in the back end. But this front end here, this website that you're seeing, is showing us all the different pieces. And this is more of a diagnostic screen than it is actually for interacting with the knowledge base itself. Now, certainly you can add any data to this if you wanted to. It interacts just like Markdown, because it is Markdown in the editor here, and it auto saves for us. So anyways, just wanted to show you that it is, there is knowledge, there is data behind the scenes. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into this. This is going to be released soon, but the back end is already released. So this is coming soon. So just a little teaser there for you on that. Let's jump back over to Claude Code or Claude Cowork and see what it's got. All right, so it says here we got a Q1 financial results PDF. All right, let's go ahead and double check back in our folders here. Let's look in our outbox. Oh, there we go. There it is. So here we are. Let's go ahead and open that up. Great. So we've got 4.2 million. We've got a whole bunch of data. And if we want to, let's go ahead and just double check on this. So Q1 revenue, 4.2 million in revenue there. So you can see it is finding the data. There was no other data in there for it to find except for going to the knowledge base. So that's pretty cool. Let's jump back to Cowork. Let's create a new task. Now you'll notice that the new task is now automatically linking the last project. So we're already ready to go with the anchor. I'm going to ask it, what are the who are the three most critical clients that we have right now for this week. You'll see, there we go. It's gone ahead and it says it's going to look at the database, the knowledge base there. All right. And so we see here, it's actually gone ahead and found three of the most critical clients that we currently have in the knowledge base. It's showing here that Blue Water Marine is the most urgent. Their VP of Operations flagged 3 unplanned shutdowns in 6 days. All right, well, that's very interesting there. So the diagnostic audit was assigned to Rashid. And okay, all right, so let's ask, thank you for that. With Blue Water Marine, who is our point of contact there? Do we know the VP of Operations and who that is? And so it says here, we don't actually have the information about who the VP of Blue Water Marine is, but we do know who the point of contact from our side is, from our company. So let's go ahead and say, I'm just going to act like I went out and had a conversation with our team member, and they came back and they told us that the VP's name is someone else here. Okay, so I talked to Rashid, and they said that the VP's name is John Smith. And so now the agent here is going to say, oh, well, now that we have that information, let's go ahead and add that individual in. And it's going to go ahead and save that without us even saying anything to it to do that. And a lot of this magic that's happening right now is because of the skill that is associated with it. The assistant skill that's here. Okay, there we go. Saved. John Smith, VP of Operations of Blue Water Marine, is now in the knowledge base. And so what I'd like to do is really quickly jump back over to that knowledge base diagnostic screen. Let's go ahead and look for John. I might have to refresh here. Again, this is prototype here. Let's see, John, there's John Smith. There we are. There we go. John Smith is the VP of Operations of Blue Water Marine, identified on that date to date. Let's go ahead and click on the link. We can actually see the Blue Water Marine Supply Company. This is the client. We've got some more information on it, and there we go. We can see Rashid is the link to that. We can see the permissions of all the different individuals who can actually look at this particular file as well. Cool. So that's a quick demo there of what this can do. We can go on and on for this a lot longer. There's a lot of other things I could show you, but I don't want to take all your time with that. But what I want to do is I want to show you the back end. I want to show you the reasoning why I've created this. And I think you're going to want to stick around for this so I can show you exactly how Brilliant works. Now, the first thing I want to make sure you know is that it is on GitHub. It's an open source project. You can download it today if you want to, and you can begin working with your own knowledge base and creating your own Brilliant knowledge base system on your side. Really excited to be able to release that. And one of the reasons why I got really excited about this is I had kept seeing a lot of different pieces of literature coming out around these different things. One of the big ones that came out just on April 2nd was from Karpathy, and he was talking about his actual workflow using Obsidian. So he says, I use Obsidian as an IDE front end where I can see the raw data and compiled in the wiki. So he's essentially saying, He's clipping all this data, he's putting it all into this raw folder, and he's letting the AI agents really dive in and summarize this data and put it into the knowledge base for him. One of the interesting things that I saw was, he says, I rarely touch it directly. I've played with a few Obsidian plugins to render the data out, but otherwise it sounds like he's not actually using Obsidian to really view the data. He's just interacting with his agents. Ultimately, at the very end, he ends up saying, I think there's room for an incredibly new product instead of a hacky collection of scripts. So he even was talking about that there. But this is a very, very popular post. You can see here, he's got about 19.7 million views of this exact thing. along with a ton of other saves, 100,000 saves of this. So many of you have probably already seen this article. And this is what I saw as well was it about 10 days ago now at this point, maybe a little bit further back. But this describes a beautiful organization for a personal knowledge base. And inevitably, if you start to think further down the line, you start to think about, okay, how many agents am I going to have interacting with my data? And that's when you start thinking about teams and making it available for teams. So whether that's your OpenClaw team of agents, or that's your own private or personal agent harness that you're developing right now, you're going to eventually have teams of agents or people working with your data, and have it governed well is going to be the next thing. So the next thing I saw was Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot, the CTO of HubSpot. He replied to that same post that Karpathy did, and he said, I've got this idea. I've been pondering it for a little bit, but we're going to put it in the cloud. We're going to make this system work in the cloud. One can imagine you'll be able to use LLMs to navigate the directory tree. You'll be able to use an API, MCP, and a CLI. And he's even got a pretty cool domain he was talking about, using secondbrain.com. So kudos to him. But what he ended up doing is basically validating exactly what I was working on at this point. So thank you for that, Mr. Shah. I really appreciate that. That was really cool of you to do that. Lastly, but not least, there's another big wave that's out there. Definitely came up with some really cool stuff in his article, which if you haven't read, Institutional AI versus Individual AI, this is a tremendous document where he's talking about how if everyone on your team is using AI, but you're all using it independently, everyone's going in different directions. Whereas you begin to use a knowledge base, you begin to get everyone aligned on the same knowledge. And that is really where the power begins. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but here's a really cool diagram here. So let's say you have two people who disagree on a fact, but they both have their own chatbot, and they end up getting an answer saying with bias, hey, you're right. And the other one does as well. It pushes them further apart because it further reinforces their beliefs. Whereas if you have an institutional layer of AI, let's say this knowledge base, the brilliant knowledge base that we're talking about, when you both disagree, or when two people disagree and the knowledge or the information says one thing that they can both agree on, then it makes it a lot easier to get work done. There's a bunch of really cool stuff in here. I won't go into all of it, but anyway, I just want to make sure you saw those articles. So seeing all that happen, seeing the alignment in these last 2 weeks alone, seeing how Cowork and Claude Code are just ramping up, and seeing how powerful these agents are and these coding agents are, it really has made this the time to put Brilliant together. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm going to dive in deep now. I'm going to show you all the different pieces of what's happening here. So, you know, your knowledge is splintered amongst several different areas. You've got your email, your calendar, your Notion. Maybe you've got Obsidian going. You've got your meeting notes. You've got Slack. And you and your agents, or one agent, or if you're using OpenClaw, you've got maybe several agents. They have access to a lot of these things, but it's just with you. That's as far as it goes. And maybe some of you have a personal knowledge base built, and you're developing that, which is awesome as well. But when you start thinking about your team, you start to think about all the different agents and all the different people and all of their agents and how that interacts with your company's data. And if it does actually interact with your company data or not. And that's where you begin to look at the scale of things. And that's why I don't want to be harping on Obsidian, but right now it's being touted as the answer for your team's knowledge base, the answer for your team's second brain. And I will say it's an amazing tool for a personal knowledge base, as we saw there with Mr. Karpathy. But when you start looking at the team side of things, you begin looking at some serious problems in terms of how to manage an individual file base for each one of these individuals. And that's really ultimately where things begin to get kind of chaotic there. So with the Brilliant knowledge base, essentially what we're looking at instead, now obviously you have access to all your work and all your different tools and things like that, but your Cowork agent sits between all those and structures the data inside of the knowledge base. So as you're getting those emails from clients, or you have your meeting notes, those are being able to digest by your Cowork agent. And as you saw there, as I was just talking with Cowork, that assistant skill was interacting with it flawlessly. It was having just no issue at all there communicating with it. And this is still very early on. So it's only going to keep getting better. So I've brought up a few things that I think are really critical. And I mentioned this earlier, and that is when you start looking at permissions. This is a big thing. This is really big. When you start looking at permissions with files versus databases, when everyone on your team is working on the same files, there is a tendency, unless you've got strict file controls that are being managed very well, there is very little that you can do to prevent your agents from your new hires or your senior staff from overlapping and potentially colliding here. So it takes a lot of work to manage and maintain the governance of the files if you're using a standard file system. Now you take the same situation where you have a database that has permissions built in by default. Your CEO and your new hire have completely different permissions. Whereas the CEO is authorized to see the financial records, the new hire and their agent that has the same level of permissions that they do is blocked and has no access to the financial records. So that's one big piece of why this really matters. Why file systems versus databases in terms of architecture are so critical. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking that you can have permissions on files, and you absolutely can. It's just not as easy to set it up as it is with a database, where it's built into the actual fabric of how the data is being interacted with. Here's another big thing with files. If you've got an agent that writes something to a file, and this agent didn't see it, but they read it before agent A wrote to the file, then when agent B writes, then it's actually going to overwrite whatever agent A said. The last write wins, as we see here, and agent A's work is gone. Now, there's ways around that, but again, that's not the natural way that things work. So it's, as Karpathy was saying, it'd be nice not to have all these hacky scripts and things working in the background to try to make the file system work the way that we want it to. Now, instead, with a database, you have a governance layer inside of it. Now, this is a staging layer where you have agent A's writing to the staging layer, you got agent B writing as well. And the governance layer says, hey, are these conflicting elements? Are they conflicting rights? If not, if they're both appending to the same thing, let's keep going. But if there was an issue, let's have an AI agent in there that watches and says, hey, this actually wasn't a conflict. It looks like it could have been, but we've managed it, we've pushed it on. And every change is attributed. Nothing is lost silently. Whereas in a file system, you would have lost the data. You would have lost the rights. So certainly, if you're currently using Obsidian and you have multiple people writing to the same file, you might have already experienced this. There are some workarounds with some database systems that can be plugins on top of it. But some of you have probably run into some issues if you've already been trying this. All right, so let's get to the goods. Like why do a knowledge base in the first place? And I think a lot of you know why already. It's because when you begin working with a knowledge base, it becomes the central source of truth. And when we start looking at agent first design, you know, the notes, it's not just notes, it becomes summaries, it becomes analysis of those notes. It becomes knowledge that's accruing without you having to edit by yourself, which I have done, you know, with my journals. It was hours and hours, hundreds of hours in Obsidian, just typing away, keeping track of all the notes and making sure it looks good. Now, with a compounding edge, as it says here, every day your team uses this, your knowledge base gets smarter. New hires, they certainly can see things a lot easier. As they get started, the system just gets better. And so here's a diagram really quickly. It just shows from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 to day 4, how, if you're using it on a daily basis, how you'll start to interweave and interconnect all the different pieces that are in your business. And that really is where the compounding effects begin. So if you're starting with this now, in 6 months, you can imagine how intense your knowledge base will be and how streamlined it has become, especially as you've been using your agents to summarize things and get them to the surface. You know, contrast that to your competitor who might get started in 6 months with their knowledge base. What a difference in terms of your ability to have all that data already in your knowledge base then. And that becomes your moat and your defensibility and competitive edge against them. All right. And so as these knowledge bases grow, you got to start thinking about context. Now, if you're not worried about context windows yet, and context size and how much you're using of context, this section might not be for you. But if those of you who are with me with Claude Code and with Claude Co-work here, and you know that you've got limits on how much you can ingest, and you also know that the larger the knowledge base is, you just can't fit it all in there, and you wouldn't want to be always downloading everything in. There's a special system we have here. It's a 5-level system that allows the agents to just load in just what they need, just to give them a map at the very beginning of every session. So essentially what it gets is it gets category counts, it gets document index titles, IDs, and paths, and then timestamps as well on level 2. And then it gets the relationship layers of the entities and in between entities. Now, I did hint earlier that we do have relationships, typed links, and typed links are a little bit different. We're going to talk about that in a little bit longer from here. But essentially, we now know the names, the IDs, the paths, and the timestamps. We also know the relationships between these files and these entries. Now, if we need to go further, what it can do is it can load in a level 4 summary of an entry at this point, but it's going to have to ask for that directly. And then if it finds that its summary is not enough, but it knows this is the document it wants to go to, it can load level 5, which is the full context of that entry. So you have a quick map from the very beginning that it's given automatically. And then from there, it can begin to determine how much knowledge it needs to have, which is very similar to it on your local file system, where it knows the names of the files, and it may need to open the file and begin to read it. This actually goes a little bit further than that in giving it names and relationships, and then summaries on top of that, and then full context. So it doesn't even need to read or open the whole context and then read just part of it. So it's a pretty neat system. Ultimately, it gets it just enough context to get it what it needs to answer your questions, as we saw earlier in the demo. Let me scroll on down here. So when we start looking at how many people are going to be writing and reading to your knowledge base, we start to think about, okay, we have multiple people who might be inside of the knowledge base actually writing in there, but we also might have, Bob might have 2 agents that are working in for him at any given time, or maybe Alice has all 3 of these agents working for her. And as we're all interacting with the governance layer, it's helping to keep everything in order. So there's no one stepping on anyone's toes. There's no agent overwriting or blasting away some work that's already been done. And let me show you how that works here below. So this is the governance layer. There's 4 tiers to it. The first is if someone's sending in some new information and it's a brand new add of data to the system, it's going to be an auto approve tier 1. So there's no need to block it. It's just going to go ahead and add it in. Now, if there's a minor update and there's nothing that's actually competing with it, let's say there's an append or there's another update or maybe there's a correction to something, it might go ahead and just say this is level 2, and then it may auto merge as long as it passes all the rules in tier 2. Now, let's say there is actually a conflict where one agent is going to be overwriting something or has deleted a section potentially and has written in something new. And another agent may be also trying to do something at the same time in that same area. Well, if that is a conflict that's risen and escalated, then an AI agent that understands how to merge documents and how to reread each revision that's being proposed, it will be able to read those at that time. And if it determines that it's an easy fix, it'll go ahead and auto approve and merge those properly. Now, if it's not something that it can easily do, and this is something that's outside of its bounds, it doesn't feel comfortable with it, it will raise it to a human review. So you've got 4 levels of triage of edits, whereas with a file system, you don't have any observability on any of these things. And so that's a massive improvement over what you would get with just Obsidian with the file system. So let's talk about permissions again. We talked briefly about it, But essentially, there's three different ways you can look at this. You've got the read-write access. You can read and write from within the system. You can read only, which is like a viewer, and then also you've got no access. So essentially, you may not be able to see certain files based on your role or based on your group that you're in. Now, the way I've set this up, as you can see here, I've set it up to mimic the Google Workspace style. I know a lot of you have used Google Workspace in the past, or maybe are currently using it. And the way that they have it set up, I think it's very easy to understand. You've got your editor, you've got your commenter, and then you also have your viewer. And then ultimately, if you don't have any of those three statuses, you don't have access to the file. Now, the way I see this is we want to have agents that can act on our behalf, right? And so an agent that's acting on our behalf is actually going to have the same permissions that we do. So if a human is, or a person is listed with viewer status only on a particular file, then the agent that is working for them, or the agents that are working for them, have read-only access as well. So the person is kind of the anchor for permissions there. Now, if they have editor permissions, then the agent itself will also have read and write access as well. Here's another big thing I wanted to mention as well, is just like with the Google Workspace, I believe that each person who joins the workspace, who is invited to the workspace, will need to have their own private area. So essentially, from the very beginning, they won't have access to anything else unless it's been shared with them, whether through their group or directly to them. That way they can begin to build their own knowledge base internally. And then as the information like your mission statement or maybe your code of conduct is shared, all these different pieces of things that you might get on day one as an onboarding of a new hire, a lot of those things are going to be shared with them automatically right away. But if you're in the financial group and you're putting in financials for Q1, more than most likely, that information doesn't need to be shared automatically with the knowledge base as large or at large. So that probably wouldn't be shared at that point. Now, type links, I've talked about this earlier twice now, I think. So this is the third time. So the difference here, the reason why I'm so excited about these is because it really makes a huge difference. And so it says here, as you can see, wiki links say these two things are connected, where typed links say how they're connected. So agents can query the graph, not just walk it. So what does that look like? Well, in Obsidian, as you saw, all those links that are together, they basically just say entry A links to entry B, and entry A links to entry C, and so on. Whereas when you start looking at typed links, you can say entry A supersedes entry B. Entry A is related to entry C, or entry A is deprecated by entry D. And there's several other typed links that are out there as well, like valid until, and so many other things that are temporal or time-based. So you can imagine if you say how many items are related to entry C, or how many things supersedes entry B, you can begin to see how your agent can get a lot more information quickly. Whereas here, you're just not getting, you just know that they're related. You don't know why they're related. And that's a big, big change. And this is actually very common with graph databases, like your Neo4j as an example. So that's a really cool thing. I think graph databases really are the way to link knowledge with AI. So how do you connect to it? We talked about this during the demo, but essentially there's three ways to connect to it. You've got your REST API, which allows you to connect through Claude Code, CoWork. Again, if you've got the teams or the enterprise level there, MCP server is how we connected today through CoWork. Again, it's just a server that I built into the system. So once that's live, you can connect to that and make it really easy to connect there. And then the CLI as well. This is a bit more technical. So it's just possible to do it that way, very similar to how Claude Code works. But anyways, those are the three different ways to connect to it. And if you want to check out the other pieces here, you can go ahead and have a look at this real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to keep moving. So the skill, that's really where the magic's happening. So the skill has a lot of information. It's got all the API connections. It knows how to connect to the knowledge base. And so what we end up doing is we use this skill, the assistant skill, we attach it to Claude Code or Cowork. It's able to connect to the knowledge base through the MCP tools and ultimately to the end. So that's the software essentially. That's the magic that's happening in the background. And as we add more skills mean it can do more with this data. And there's just, as you know, if you haven't already seen the skills libraries that are out there, they're growing and growing. This is a very fun field to look at and see. So as we've started, we've got an initial assistant skill here, and it's only going to keep getting better as the system grows. And what you'll find too is as you are using your own knowledge base, your skills and your system will begin learning from itself, and you'll begin putting in shared knowledge into the knowledge base to help make it better and better as well. So onboarding, how does it look? So I would say from the beginning, you probably want to have either you, the owner, if you are the owner, or the manager that has a lot of this institutional knowledge. You would probably be the first person to start using this. And you would begin feeding the knowledge base with that institutional knowledge. Eventually, you'd begin to bring in your team members through invitations. So you would basically invite them to join the group, and you would be able to specify what group they're in and if they have global permissions or things like that. Eventually, though, you would look at joining or having your organization join in, where you might have your leadership team has full permissions, whereas your managers might have scoped permissions, and then your staff might have different permissions that have different scoping as well, depending on what your needs are within your company. So I have seen this idea, and I think it could work on a department level, or it could work on a whole company level. Because no matter how big your team is, it all just depends on your permissions and how you have it all set up. So you can have all of your data in the knowledge base where your agents can work and live, and you can work with your agents directly to further accelerate your knowledge growth and further align your whole team to go forward there. So here's a few reasons why your team might choose it. It's one shared source of truth. The governance layer keeps quality high as the team grows. It's agent first by design. Again, it's designed so that you work with the agents with your knowledge. It's not so that you go into the back end and begin to type in the documents yourself. That's going to slow you down compared to getting the agents to work for you there. Now, granted, there might be a few instances where you do need to go in and make some modifications yourself, but for the most part, agent first design is really critical here. So again, the agents inherit their humans' permissions. So the person who's having the agents go on their behalf, they're going to have the same level of permission. It's just easy that way. And obviously this could be changed in the future, but that's how I've seen this play out. And I think that's actually pretty good. And then last but not least, it's open source. So you can take this and run with it however you want. You can modify it if you want to. I know that those of you who are out there with Claude Code right now, you're probably thinking, I could do this, I could take this, and I can make it how I want it. I can make some adjustments. I'd ask that you actually come contribute to Brilliant here and make this even better. But if you wanted to, you can go and take it to your own team and make it however you want and use this as a starting point. And I definitely encourage you to do so because I think it's really powerful. And so this gives you a quick rundown on what you would need to do. This is just a few commands that can get you up and running. It is a Docker program, so it's designed to run in a container. You can access GitHub there. And that's the kind of the rundown of Brilliant. When it comes to knowledge bases for teams and agents, I think we can all agree that file systems are just not the architecture that it's designed to be built upon. It really needs to be a database, and it really needs to have governance over writing permissions there. You also need to have permissions, I should say. The governance is there for making sure that no rights are overriding anyone else, and that there's any conflicts that they're resolved without or with minimum human input there. Typed links are big. Having relationships between the data, knowing what the relationship between this document and that report and this person, those are all critical pieces that we need to know, and that will only help the database and the agents who are working with it go even further. So what are the takeaways from this? Files don't scale for teams. Databases do. And that's what Brilliant is here for. And it's open source, so you can take it today. So please do. Now, if you want this for your team today, but you don't have anyone to help you implement it, book a discovery call with me. There's a link here in the description below. I'd be glad to have a conversation with you to see if your needs match up to what this system can do. And if you really truly believe it does, then let me know. I think we can have a great conversation about that. I'm planning on making another video to help actually show more about how to set up the system for a full walkthrough. You go ahead and subscribe and like this video. Apparently that's what all the famous YouTubers say. So if you would, I'd greatly appreciate that. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can go ahead and put them in the comments below. If you just want to say, hey, I love Obsidian, please provide that below as well if you want to. I am on LinkedIn as well, so if you want to reach out to me there and make a connection, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. This stuff is really cool. I think that if you stayed this long to the end of this video, it was a long one, and I appreciate you sticking with it. I think that the system, Brilliant, is going to be the thing that a lot of people are looking for, and I'm really excited about it. And if you are too, I'd love to hear about it. Now, my name is Jeremy Hodge, and until next time, see you.